everybody.
How y'all
This
doing?
is my daddy.
That's right.
I love boo 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 boo.
And what else do you want to tell them, Anaya?
I am 6 and I love funny jokes. Funny.
Now you're 6. What is your daddy's name?
Slim.
And what else? What's his real name?
Real name's Coleman.
Yeah, what's the...
5 years in August. I don't miss a day, a month, go and bring flowers. I had to bury what they found.
A rapper's body cut into pieces and scattered across multiple dumpsters in Baytown, Texas. The killer? His own girlfriend, who reported him missing while sleeping in his family's home. This isn't fiction. It's the brutal end of Stephen "Slim" Don Coleman's promising life. On August 18, 2017, 30-year-old Cierra Sutton walked into the Baytown Police Department to report that her boyfriend, Stephen Coleman, had vanished 2 days earlier. She told officers he had simply left their apartment after an argument and hadn't returned. A routine missing person case, it seemed. But reality told a different story. As Sutton spoke with investigators, claiming concern for Stephen's whereabouts, his dismembered remains were already decomposing in a landfill. The contrast couldn't be more stark. A woman filing a missing person report for someone she had already killed, dismembered, and discarded. This wasn't just about a disappearance. It was about betrayal at its most profound. A man murdered by the person he trusted enough to sleep beside. When detectives began questioning Sutton, cracks appeared immediately in her account. She claimed Stephen had walked away after a disagreement, taking nothing but his cell phone. Yet his car remained parked outside. His wallet was still in the apartment. His family hadn't heard from him. Unusual for someone who maintained close ties with his mother and brother. More questions arose. Why wait 2 full days to report him missing? Why were his social media accounts silent? Why did neighbors report hearing unusual noises from the apartment on the night he allegedly left? Sutton's answers shifted with each retelling. First, she suggested he might have gone to Houston to cool off. Later, she wondered if he'd traveled to visit friends. When pressed about their argument, details became vague, inconsistent. Most telling was her demeanor. Detectives noted how she spoke of Stephen in past tense just days after his alleged disappearance. When asked directly if she had harmed him, Sutton denied it but avoided eye contact. She agreed to a search of their apartment, a decision that would quickly unravel her fabricated story. With a search warrant in hand, investigators entered the apartment Stephen and Cierra shared with her 10-year-old daughter. What they discovered transformed a missing person case into something far more disturbing. Blood. Not small amounts, but significant traces spread across multiple rooms. The bedroom where Stephen slept showed evidence of a violent event, with blood spatter patterns consistent with a gunshot wound. The bathroom contained traces suggesting extensive cleanup efforts. The kitchen showed signs of something even more horrific. Forensic technicians documented every drop, every smear. Luminol testing revealed attempts to clean away evidence, but blood leaves traces even skilled killers can't eliminate completely. The investigation expanded to Sutton's Jeep, where more blood evidence emerged. DNA testing would later confirm what investigators already suspected. The blood belonged to Stephen Coleman. Most disturbing of all, these discoveries came while Stephen's family desperately searched for him, unaware that evidence of his murder was being cataloged less than 2 miles from where his mother waited for news of her son. The apartment didn't just contain evidence of death. It told the story of methodical disposal, a story that would lead investigators to places no one expected. What transformed Cierra Sutton from girlfriend to killer? What happened in that apartment on August 16th that ended with Stephen Coleman shot in his sleep, his body dismembered and scattered across Baytown? The pieces of this horrific puzzle were just beginning to come together. As investigators would soon discover, Stephen himself had predicted his fate, telling a friend that if anything ever happened to him, they should look closely at Cierra. Why would he say this? What did he sense? And how did detectives finally assemble enough evidence to bring his killer to justice? If true crime cases like Stephen Coleman's matter to you, hit subscribe now and turn on notifications. Every story deserves to be told with accuracy and respect. Like this video to help us reach more viewers who value authentic true crime storytelling without sensationalism. Let's continue. Before becoming a headline in a murder case, Stephen Coleman was a 32-year-old man with dreams. Known professionally as Slim to Don, he had carved out a modest place for himself in Baytown's competitive music landscape. His days were filled with studio sessions, writing lyrics, and building connections in the Texas rap scene. Born and raised in Baytown, Stephen represented the authentic voice of his community. His music reflected both struggle and aspiration, themes that resonated with local audiences and gained him growing recognition. While not yet a household name beyond Texas, Stephen's trajectory showed promise. His YouTube channel showcased an artist developing his craft, refining his sound with each release, and steadily expanding his audience. Stephen's approach to his music career demonstrated patience and persistence. He released mixtapes through local channels, performed at small venues, and built his YouTube presence methodically. Each video gained more views than the last, suggesting momentum in his artistic journey. Fellow musicians in the Baytown scene respected his work ethic. Unlike many aspiring artists who sought shortcuts to fame, Stephen invested in improving his skills. He collaborated with other local artists, creating a supportive network rather than viewing everyone as competition. His sound combined classic Southern rap influences with personal storytelling that connected with listeners. While mainstream success remained elusive, regional recognition was building. Local radio stations occasionally played his tracks, and his social media following grew consistently. In his final recordings, Stephen spoke about plans for a professionally produced EP, a project that would represent his evolution as an artist and potentially attract wider attention. It was to be titled Finally Rising, a name that would later carry tragic irony. At the center of Stephen's life stood his family. His mother, Coleman, remained his strongest supporter from his first rhymes to his final recordings. Their bond transcended typical mother-son relationships. She was his confidant, his business advisor, and often his first listener when he created new music. His brother also played a crucial role in Stephen's life, offering both emotional and practical support. When equipment needed upgrading or transportation to performances was required, his brother consistently showed up. This family unit created the foundation that allowed Stephen to pursue his musical ambitions. Extended family members described Stephen as the connector who organized gatherings and maintained relationships. During holidays, he was known for bringing people together, making sure traditions continued even as lives grew busy. These connections proved vital when Stephen disappeared. His family mobilized immediately, distributing flyers, contacting friends, and pressing authorities to take action while hope still remained. In the months before his death, Stephen shared a modest apartment in Baytown with Cierra Sutton and her 10-year-old daughter. The living arrangement seemed practical. Shared expenses, a stable environment, and proximity to local studios where Stephen recorded. The apartment itself was unremarkable. A 2-bedroom unit in a complex populated largely by working-class families. Neighbors rarely noticed anything unusual until the final weeks before Stephen's death, when some reported hearing arguments through the walls. Stephen had discussed moving to Houston eventually to access better opportunities in the music industry, but financial constraints kept this plan in the future tense. Those who knew Stephen consistently highlighted his reliability. If he promised a performance, he showed up prepared. If he committed to a collaboration, he delivered his verses on time. This dependability extended beyond his professional life. Friends knew they could count on him during personal difficulties.
So many ways, and it was just like, yeah, he was older than me, so I gotta call him my big brother.
His genuine nature drew people to him. Rather than adopting personas or pretenses, Stephen remained authentic in his interactions. This quality served him well in building genuine connections within the music community. Music wasn't just a career path for Stephen, it represented his passion, his voice, his legacy. He often worked late into the night perfecting lyrics, adjusting beats, and visualizing videos that would showcase his artistry. Even with growing local success, friends described Stephen as grounded, focused more on creative quality than fame. The most haunting aspect of Stephen's story emerged after his death. Months before his murder, he had pulled aside a close friend and shared something troubling. "If anything ever happens to me, look at Cierra first." This wasn't said dramatically or during an argument. It came during a casual conversation, delivered with the seriousness of genuine concern. The friend didn't press for details, assuming it reflected temporary relationship tension. Stephen never elaborated on specific threats or incidents that prompted this statement. Yet something in his relationship caused enough anxiety that he felt compelled to establish a record of his concerns that would prove prophetic. August 16, 2017, began as an ordinary Wednesday for Stephen Coleman. Neighbors reported seeing him return to his apartment in the afternoon, carrying groceries and nodding hello as he usually did. A passing acquaintance mentioned Stephen seemed to be in good spirits, discussing an upcoming studio session scheduled for the weekend. By evening, Stephen had posted a brief video to his social media, talking about new music. This would be his final online presence. The timestamp showed 7:23 p.m., a digital marker of his last hours alive. No one outside his apartment would see Stephen Coleman alive again. In the weeks before August 16th, the relationship between Stephen and Cierra had deteriorated. Friends noticed their social media interactions had decreased. When they appeared together at a local event in early August, observers noted visible tension. The specific catalyst for their final argument remains unknown. Cierra later claimed to investigators that they had fought about finances, a recurring source of conflict. Other accounts suggested jealousy may have played a role, with Cierra questioning Stephen's interactions with female fans. What's certain is that by evening, the apartment had become the setting for escalating hostility. A neighbor reported hearing raised voices around 9:30 p.m., though not unusual enough to prompt a call to authorities. The argument eventually subsided, creating a false sense that tensions had resolved. Sometime during the night of August 16th, while Stephen slept, Cierra Sutton took decisive action. According to the forensic evidence and her later partial admissions, she approached the bed where Stephen lay unconscious. With deliberate intent, Sutton positioned a handgun to Stephen's head and pulled the trigger. The single gunshot caused immediate death. Stephen never woke, never had an opportunity to defend himself or flee. The murder weapon, a 9mm handgun legally registered to Sutton, was fired at close range. The forensic team would later determine that powder residue patterns indicated a distance of less than 6 inches between the muzzle and Stephen's head. This wasn't impulsive violence during an argument. It was execution carried out against a defenseless, sleeping victim. What followed the shooting revealed premeditation and callousness beyond comprehension. Rather than calling authorities or fleeing the scene, Sutton began a systematic process of evidence elimination. First, she moved her 10-year-old daughter to another room, ensuring the child wouldn't witness what came next. Then, Sutton retrieved a machete from the storage closet, a tool that investigators would later confirm she had purchased 2 weeks prior. Over several hours, in the bathroom of their shared apartment, Sutton dismembered Stephen's body. The medical examiner would later document precise cuts that suggested methodical work rather than frantic desperation. The dismemberment served a practical purpose, making disposal easier while complicating identification. It also revealed Sutton's determination to escape consequences. Each cut represented not just the destruction of evidence, but the dehumanization of someone who had shared her life. The bathroom, later processed by forensic teams, contained evidence of extensive cleanup efforts. With Stephen's body reduced to transportable parts, Sutton began the next phase of her plan. Loading the remains into plastic bags, she placed them in her Jeep during the pre-dawn hours of August 17th. Surveillance cameras later recovered from businesses around Baytown showed Sutton's vehicle stopping near multiple dumpsters between 3:40 a.m. and 5:15 a.m. At each location, she quickly deposited bags before moving to the next site. This strategy wasn't random. It demonstrated awareness of trash collection schedules and routes. By distributing remains across different locations, Sutton maximized the chance that evidence would be compacted and transported to landfills before discovery. The distribution pattern covered a 5-mile radius around Baytown, with particular focus on commercial dumpsters where regular pickup would ensure quick movement to larger disposal facilities. The most substantial remains, the torso that would eventually lead to identification, ended up in a dumpster behind a shopping center scheduled for collection that morning, destined for the Chambers County landfill. With physical evidence distributed throughout Baytown's waste management system, Sutton turned to crafting her alibi. She cleaned the apartment thoroughly, using bleach on surfaces where blood had spilled. She flipped the mattress to hide a blood stain that had soaked through. On August 18th, 2 days after the murder, Sutton went to Stephen's mother's house, expressing concern about his absence. This performance included showing text messages she claimed to have sent him, messages investigators would later determine were sent from Stephen's phone to herself after his death. Most calculated was her decision to file a missing person report with Baytown police on that same day. Sutton appeared appropriately worried, providing investigators with Stephen's descriptions and recent photographs. In what would later be seen as extraordinary boldness, Sutton even asked to stay with Stephen's family while the search continued. They welcomed her, unaware that the person responsible for their son's disappearance was sleeping under their roof. What psychological factors drive someone to murder a partner in cold blood? Comment your theories below about what motivated this crime. Your insights help our community understand these complex cases. Hit like if you want more in-depth analysis of the evidence that eventually exposed this calculated murder. On August 18, 2017, 2 days after murdering Stephen Coleman, Cierra Sutton walked into the Baytown Police Department to file an official missing person report. She told officers that Stephen had left their apartment following an argument and hadn't returned or made contact. The report included standard details: Stephen's physical description, clothing last seen wearing, and personal information. Sutton provided recent photos and contact information for his family members. She portrayed genuine concern, suggesting places he might have gone and people he might have contacted. This report initiated official police involvement, transforming a private crime into a public investigation that would ultimately expose the truth. The inconsistencies in Sutton's story prompted investigators to request a search warrant for the apartment. What they discovered told a very different story than her missing person report. Blood evidence appeared throughout the residence. Despite Sutton's cleaning efforts, luminol testing revealed substantial blood residue in the bedroom where Stephen had been shot. The spatter patterns aligned with a gunshot wound to the head while the victim was in a horizontal position, supporting the theory that Stephen was killed while sleeping. The bathroom contained the most damning evidence. Blood traces in drain pipes, on tile grout, and behind fixtures indicated extensive cleanup after what forensic technicians determined was dismemberment. Microscopic tissue fragments recovered from bathroom surfaces provided crucial DNA evidence. The kitchen showed additional blood traces, suggesting Sutton had moved between rooms during her post-murder activities. Most significantly, these forensic discoveries directly contradicted Sutton's claim that Stephen had simply walked away after an argument. Investigators next examined Sutton's Jeep Cherokee. Despite attempts to clean the vehicle interior, forensic techniques revealed blood evidence in multiple locations: the cargo area, rear seat cushions, and floor mats. When confronted with these findings, Sutton initially claimed the blood came from transporting injured animals to the veterinary clinic where she worked. However, DNA testing conclusively matched the blood to Stephen Coleman. Tire tread patterns from the Jeep also matched impressions found behind several dumpsters across Baytown, locations where surveillance cameras had captured a similar vehicle during early morning hours on August 17th. This evidence established a clear timeline of disposal activities. The investigation's turning point came on August 22, 2017, when workers at the Chambers County landfill discovered human remains while processing incoming waste. They immediately notified authorities, who secured the area and began methodical recovery efforts. The remains, a male torso with distinctive tattoos, were quickly connected to the Coleman investigation. The dismemberment pattern showed clean, deliberate cuts consistent with a sharp, heavy blade. Medical examiners determined the victim had been killed by a gunshot wound before dismemberment. Though DNA confirmation would take additional time, the physical characteristics matched Stephen Coleman. The landfill discovery transformed the case from a suspicious missing person investigation to a confirmed homicide. Most tellingly, waste management records showed the remains had arrived via trash collection routes, serving the exact dumpster locations where Sutton's vehicle had been recorded stopping. Security footage from a Walmart near the apartment showed Sutton purchasing cleaning supplies, heavy-duty garbage bags, and a new mattress pad at 6:30 a.m. on August 17th, just hours after the murder. She paid using Stephen Coleman's credit card, signing his name on the electronic pad. Additional surveillance cameras captured her at a gas station, disposing of items in an exterior trash can, and later at a hardware store purchasing additional cleaning products. Each video established a crucial timeline element, allowing investigators to track her movements in the hours following Stephen's death. When combined with cell phone location data, these digital breadcrumbs created an irrefutable record of her actions. Neighbors provided critical testimony about unusual activities at the apartment. One resident reported seeing Sutton moving furniture at 2 a.m. on August 17th, including dragging a heavy rolled carpet to her vehicle. A maintenance worker recalled Sutton requesting emergency plumbing service on August 17th, claiming shower drain issues. He noted unusual chemical smells in the bathroom and Sutton's insistence that he only address the clog without removing drain traps. Most damaging was testimony from friends in Louisiana, where Sutton fled as the investigation intensified. Two acquaintances stated she had openly admitted to killing Stephen while he slept and described the dismemberment in detail. Investigators methodically connected these elements: forensic findings, vehicle evidence, surveillance footage, witness statements, and the landfill discovery to construct a comprehensive timeline of events. The evidence revealed not just what happened to Stephen Coleman, but also exposed the calculated nature of Sutton's actions both during and after the murder. Each piece of evidence reinforced others, creating a case built on multiple independent proof points rather than circumstantial connections. What emerged was the undeniable truth behind Stephen Coleman's disappearance. As evidence mounted and investigators closed in, Cierra Sutton fled Baytown. On September 1, 2017, she disappeared from Texas, abandoning her apartment and workplace without notice. She traveled to Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, where she had family connections, believing distance would provide safety. During this period, Sutton told conflicting stories about Stephen's disappearance. To some, she maintained he had simply left her. To others, she hinted at knowing more than she publicly admitted. Most disturbing were accounts from two Louisiana acquaintances who later testified that Sutton had openly described killing Stephen while intoxicated, statements she didn't realize would eventually reach authorities. On September 14, 2017, the search for Cierra Sutton ended. U.S. Marshals and Jefferson Parish Sheriff's deputies located her at a residence in Metairie, Louisiana. Acting on information from Texas authorities, they surrounded the home at 6:30 a.m. and took Sutton into custody without incident. Body camera footage captured her surprise at being found. Despite having evaded capture for nearly 2 weeks, she offered no resistance during arrest. When informed of the charges against her, Sutton remained silent, requesting an attorney immediately. The arrest warrant detailed murder charges based on evidence recovered from the apartment and landfill. Following her arrest in Louisiana, Sutton initially fought extradition to Texas. Her attorneys filed procedural challenges, arguing inadequate evidence linked her to Coleman's death. These delaying tactics failed when Louisiana judges reviewed the substantial case details provided by Texas authorities. On September 29, 2017, Sutton was transported back to Texas by armed guards. She arrived at Harris County Jail, where heightened security measures reflected both the severity of her alleged crimes and public interest in the case. The formal charging document filed in Texas courts specified first-degree murder, with additional charges related to tampering with evidence and improper disposal of human remains. Sutton's trial began on January 14, 2019, after numerous procedural delays and attorney changes. The Harris County Courthouse filled with Stephen's family, media representatives, and community members who had followed the case. Prosecutors presented a methodical case built on multiple evidence types. Forensic experts detailed blood pattern analysis from the apartment, explaining how it confirmed both the murder location and dismemberment process. DNA analysts presented findings linking blood evidence to Stephen Coleman with near-perfect matching probabilities. Digital evidence specialists showcased surveillance footage tracking Sutton's movements after the murder, including credit card purchases of cleaning supplies using Coleman's card. Cell phone records placed her at dumpster locations across Baytown during critical hours. The medical examiner testified about the remains recovered from the landfill, describing precise cutting patterns that indicated knowledge of anatomy and deliberate methodology rather than panicked actions. Throughout these proceedings, Sutton displayed minimal emotional reaction, sitting quietly beside her public defender as evidence of her actions accumulated. Perhaps the most powerful testimony came from Marcus Johnson, a longtime friend of Stephen Coleman. Johnson recounted a conversation from April 2017, just 4 months before the murder. During a recording session, Stephen had pulled him aside and said, "If anything ever happens to me, look at Cierra first. Something isn't right." Johnson described Stephen's demeanor during this conversation as serious but not panicked, as if sharing a genuine concern rather than making a dramatic statement. When asked why he hadn't reported this to authorities sooner, Johnson explained he had initially dismissed it as relationship tension, only recognizing its significance after Stephen's disappearance. After 7 days of testimony and evidence presentation, the jury received the case on February 5, 2019. They deliberated for just 4 hours before reaching their decision. As the courtroom fell silent, the jury foreman delivered their verdict, guilty of murder in the first degree. Sutton showed no visible reaction as the verdict was read, staring straight ahead as Stephen's family embraced each other in the gallery. The judge thanked the jury for their service, noting the particularly difficult nature of the evidence they had been required to evaluate. He scheduled sentencing for the following week, ordering Sutton to remain in custody. On February 12, 2019, Cierra Sutton returned to court for sentencing. Stephen's mother delivered an impact statement describing the profound loss of her son and the additional trauma caused by the manner of his death. After considering these statements and reviewing case details, the judge sentenced Sutton to 45 years in prison. Under Texas law, she must serve at least half this sentence, 22.5 years, before becoming eligible for parole consideration. The sentence reflected both the premeditated nature of the crime and the judge's assessment of Sutton's actions following the murder, which demonstrated planning rather than momentary loss of control. For Corla Coleman, Stephen's mother, justice provided little comfort. In her only public interview following the sentencing, she spoke about the dual trauma her family endured, first losing Stephen, then confronting the brutality of his murder. "They didn't just take my son," she explained. "They took our peace. Every phone call makes me jump. Every knock at the door brings back that moment when officers told us what happened to Stephen." The Coleman family describes an ongoing grief made worse by knowing the details of Stephen's final moments. His brother has sought counseling to process not only the loss, but also the betrayal by someone the family had welcomed. Most painful for the family was learning that while they searched desperately for Stephen, Cierra had stayed in their home, accepted their comfort, all while knowing exactly what had happened. As news of the case spread, the Coleman family faced another challenge: watching Stephen's death become content for true crime productions that often emphasized graphic details over his humanity. "My son was more than his murder," Corla Coleman stated firmly when declining participation in a television documentary. "These shows want the horror, not the person he was." The family has repeatedly requested that media coverage respect Stephen's dignity by focusing on his life, his music, and his relationships, rather than sensationalizing the manner of his death. Their concerns highlight the difficult balance between public interest in criminal cases and the real human cost to those left behind. While some outlets have respected these boundaries, others continue to emphasize the case's most disturbing elements without consideration for ongoing family trauma. Baytown residents responded to the murder with collective shock, followed by determined support for the Coleman family. Local musicians organized benefit concerts, raising funds to cover funeral expenses and establish a small memorial scholarship in Stephen's name. Community leaders called for media restraint, asking that coverage preserve the dignity of everyone affected. At a prayer vigil held 1 year after Stephen's death, over 200 community members gathered to show continued support for his family. The case prompted wider discussions about domestic violence and partner murder, conversations that extended beyond Stephen's specific case to address prevention, recognition of risk factors, and resources for those needing help. Motivated by perceived gaps in the handling of Stephen's case, his family has become advocates for improvements in missing persons investigations. They specifically push for faster response when inconsistencies emerge in reports filed by intimate partners. The first 48 hours are critical, Stephen's brother explains in their advocacy materials. We believe quicker action might have preserved more evidence in Stephen's case, though the outcome wouldn't have changed. Their advocacy has contributed to procedural reviews within several Texas law enforcement agencies, resulting in updated protocols for missing adults when reported by current or former partners. The family has also supported legislation aimed at increasing penalties for improper handling of human remains, a direct response to the particularly disturbing aspects of Stephen's case that added immeasurable pain to their loss. Away from public attention, Stephen's family maintains private traditions to honor his memory. On his birthday each year, they gather to play his music and share stories that celebrate his life rather than dwell on his death. His mother has preserved his home studio equipment, occasionally allowing young musicians from the community to use it, continuing Stephen's legacy of supporting local talent. His brother wears a small memorial tattoo matching one Stephen had, a musical note with the words "Keep Rising" beneath it. The phrase has become a family motto, embodying their determination to move forward while honoring Stephen's aspirations. Stephen Coleman's case illuminates several critical issues within both criminal justice and media ethics. First, it demonstrates how domestic homicides often follow patterns that, recognized earlier, might prompt intervention. Stephen's warning to his friend, while insufficient to prevent his murder, indicates he sensed danger that others might have dismissed. Second, the case highlights tensions between public interest in true crime and the responsibility to respect victims' dignity. When cases become content, families often experience renewed trauma as intimate details circulate without context. Finally, the investigation underscores the power of methodical forensic work. Despite Sutton's efforts to eliminate evidence, scientific techniques revealed the truth, reinforcing the reality that modern forensic methods make perfect crime scenes increasingly rare, offering some reassurance to families seeking answers in similar cases. Honor Stephen Coleman's memory by subscribing to True Crime Case Tapes, where we commit to respectful, accurate storytelling. Share this video to support coverage that prioritizes victims' humanity over sensationalism. Comment below with thoughts on how media can better balance public interest with family dignity in true crime cases.
Man, I'm broken into a million pieces.